Hey, welcome to Strength for the Journey. It's our prayer that indeed this will be strength for your journey. Now, let's talk about being in the garden. 1 Corinthians 10:31 says, "So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God." And if you're wondering what that has to do with being in the garden, let's talk. Recently, my wife Martie and I had the privilege of traveling to England. While we were there, we visited Hampton Court, the home of King Henry VIII. The first thing we noticed about Hampton Court was the beautiful gardens. As an amateur gardener myself, I marveled at the lush green lawns and perfectly manicured trees, shrubs, and the vibrancy of the flowers. Standing in the midst of all that, I couldn't help but think back several hundred years to the gardener who had designed and maintained this immaculate spread of beauty for the king. Under the authority of King Henry, he managed the garden for one purpose: to bring pleasure to the king and to create beauty that would bring the king honor and glory in the eyes of every guest who was entertained at Hampton Court. So connect the dots. The gardener for King Henry and the follower of Christ have something in common, except for the fact that our king is the King of Kings, and we have been chosen to manage the gardens of our lives in ways that bring pleasure and glory to our King Jesus. And I can't help but think of the shame and displeasure it would have brought to King Henry if the gardener had slacked off, leaving the gardens weed-infested and overgrown when the king entertained important guests at Hampton Court. He wouldn't have been gardener long, you can be sure about that, if that had been the case. I also thought about how much more important it is for us to keep our lives free of the stuff that brings shame and damage to the reputation of Jesus. As gardeners of God's garden in our lives, how important it is for us to be constantly vigilant, to keep the weeds out and to prune the creepy things so they don't take over and spoil the beauty. We all know what the weeds and creepy things are in our lives, so the issue is not ignorance on what to pull out and cut back, but rather it's diligence in taking the necessary steps to eliminate the damaging elements and to groom the garden of our lives to enhance the good and beautiful things so that we keep our lives looking good for the king. And speaking of gardening, if you're looking for a good garden manual that delineates what to keep out and what should flourish, then Paul's words to the Galatian Christians is a great place to start. In Galatians 5:16 through 24, he states that the weeds of the flesh are things like sexual immorality, idolatry, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, envy, and drunkenness. By contrast, he goes on to say that the fruit, or in this case, the beautiful flowers of the Spirit, are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. You know, people pass by the garden of your life every day, all kinds of people. So take a good look at your garden. Is it a source of shame or of glory to your king? Keep the weeds pulled, prune the creepy things, and let the garden of your life grow to his glory.